Happy New Year, Moonlight citizens. It's your man on the moon, the Moonlight King, coming to you with the last episode of Moonlight Kingdom Reviews for 2025. But you thought I was going to say the last episode error. I bet I won't. And on this episode of Moonlight Kingdom Reviews, we are reviewing the final installment in the Mission Impossible film series, Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. That's right, folks. Let's get into that in 3, 2, 1. And some background on the movie before we get into that one, folks. Some background on this film is that this film had a budget ranging anywhere from $300 to $400 million. It reached a box office of $598 million from the release date of May 2025. I don't know when exactly, but it was May 2025. Directed by Christopher McQuarrie, produced by Skydance, Paramount Pictures before the merger, and TC Productions. That's right, Tom Cruise himself, the man himself, action man himself, was a producer on this project. Oh yeah. So, now that we've gotten all the background of this film, after the divisive... See, this movie was originally supposed to be called Dead Reckoning Part 2, but after the, let's say, mixed reception of Dead Reckoning Part 1, they decided to drop that title and just call that movie, when it reached DVD, Dead Reckoning, and this movie, instead of Dead Reckoning Part 2, would now be called just Final Reckoning. Because, well, nothing is a bigger, let's say, death nail to a movie's success than calling it Part 1. Because it lets people know that it kind of doesn't matter. Whatever happens in here will only really be paid. This is just the setup movie. Part 1 in a 2-part movie is the setup movie, and Part 2 is the payoff. So Part 1 is inherently designed to be unsatisfying. It's going to end on a cliffhanger. It's designed to do that. Problem with making a Part 1 movie and telling people it's a Part 1 movie is that it's just that. It ends on a cliffhanger, and it ends with a setup for Part 2. Problem with that is there's no way to guarantee a Part 2, unless, of course, you filmed the movies back to back, like The Avengers or The Strangers or various other movies. But even those movies had the presence of mind not to announce that their Part 1 was a Part 1, and audiences didn't realize until they were at the end of the film, like, oh man, this is just a setup for the next movie, and that movie will have all the answers. But actively titling a movie Dead Reckoning Part 1, as good as that movie is, it feels like half a story. It really does just feel like half a movie. But yeah. Anywho, now that that's some necessary background and my initial thoughts on the last movie, as fantastic as it is, and my thoughts on Part 1 in general, let's get into the real meat and bones of this movie, non-spoiler related. Here is the non-spoiler review of Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, so you can go see it for yourself. Honestly, folks, if I had to give this movie a rating, looking back at the action, the acting, and just, the general vibe of the film at all, man, I'm gonna be real. I'm gonna be real with you. There were points that made me laugh. There were points where the action generally had me, enthralled. Like, oh, how are they gonna get out of this? But it wasn't quite like the last movie. Like, there was no huge set piece like the train. That was great. Honestly, if I had it my way, I would fuse Part 1 and 2 into one movie instead of just having it break into 2 parts. So like, that set piece can be part of the whole movie instead of having it be the climax of Part 1, because Part 2 feels like, I don't know, Part 2 doesn't have that one huge set piece and that, time that was straight out of Time Crisis 2 with the big train sequence. There isn't a chunk of the movie that happens in like one specific location. I mean, there kind of is when they like get to, the mine that they're in and they're trying to take down the entity, but like, it's not the same. It's very for a franchise as big and as crazy and as stunt heavy as the Mission Impossible series. This one feels a lot more grounded, a lot more, well, realistic. Which, yeah, it's a much more grounded tale. Yeah, there are some pretty unrealistic moments in this film, to name a few. But just it feels a lot more, let's say, leaned back and restrained in comparison to the movies that came before it. You don't have 2 dudes jousting on the back of motorcycles. You don't have Ethan jumping down from the tallest building in the world. You don't have dude hanging on to the side of an airplane. I mean, he does hang on to an airplane in this one, but it's not quite the same. It's not a big like airplane carrier or some shit. It's just a duster that he's hanging on to, and he commandeers a plane in midair, and it's pretty cool. But that's getting into like spoiler territories, and I'll go in detail on that. But yeah, it's not as big as the movies that have come before it, but it does what it lacks in terms of bombast and spectacle. It manages to make up for in terms of like characters and the relationships the characters have with each other. You know, it's not so much a celebration of the entire Mission Impossible series as it is a celebration of a handful of movies in the series from its beginning to its middle, and then you know, it does what Rise of Skywalker was trying to do better than Rise of Skywalker. So I'll give it points in that regard. Tom Cruise can still, he's still running. He's still doing his thing, There wasn't much the masks thing that from another staple of the Mission Impossible series, there wasn't much of that. That only happened like once and then never again. There was only one mask reveal and that was it. That kind of let me down the movie. It's like, well, this is the final movie in the franchise. But like, you know, it just don't it feels like a movie that had to be the final movie as opposed to a movie that wanted to be the final movie in the franchise. It didn't seem like this was going to be the final movie from the very beginning. It felt more like a movie. This was a two-parter that was, it just felt like a two-part, a big movie that someone said was too big to be one movie. So they made the decision to break it up into two parts, but there would be more movies after this. But after the mixed reaction of the first one, they said, yeah, this next one is going to be the last one. And they now have to change what they had written down to make it the last one and give it that sense of finality to it. But with this one, the door is open for there to be more Mission Impossible movies or more spin-offs. I mean, Tom Cruise said as long as he can, he wants to make the movies for as long as he can, which is, a sign that he doesn't really want to stop making Mission Impossible movies, but like, hey, he ain't getting any younger and there's going to be a point where he has to stop making Mission Impossible movies. So, hey, if this is movie as good as it is isn't it's a good way to go out. Let me say that much. If this is truly the final Mission Impossible film and there aren't any spin-offs or TV shows planned, it's a good way to go out. It is not the best way that this franchise could have gone out, but hey, it's good enough. I'll give it that much. It is a good send-off for this franchise, for this character, for these characters as we've come to know them, from Ethan to Benji to, heck, even Grace, even though Grace has, only been around as long as the last movie. But yeah, man, what plenty of callbacks to earlier films in the franchise. I'll give it I'll give it that much, and they're done exquisitely well. The movie doesn't actively lean on nostalgia as much as it the movie does tap you on the shoulder at a specific point to be like, hey, remember this? You remember this from Mission Impossible 1? Hey, remember this other thing from Mission Impossible 1? And it even shows at the beginning, it even has like a montage of all the Mission Impossible movies that it's going to reference from here on out. No movie that's not referenced in this film shows up in that montage. So that's that, It does tie everything in quite nicely into its plot. It doesn't feel like references for the sake of references. Everything it does reference has something to do with the plot as it stands, and the movie doesn't stop to have this reference. It is a part of the story, except for in one moment that wasn't a part of the story, but was good to have there anyway, as it did flesh out a bit of character between the people that were involved in that plot beat. I'll get into that in the non-spoiler review, but yeah, in the spoiler review. But overall, I applauded the action present in this film. I applaud the writing in terms of what the characters have to do. Everyone felt like they had something to do. Everyone felt necessary in the sense that, well, if you cut this beat out of the story, there was never a point in the movie where I'm like, we could have just cut this part out for time and saved a lot of time doing this. Or there was never a point in the story where I'm like, do we really need to be doing this? It was it's not Christopher McQuarrie's best work. That was Fallout. To this day, I will say Christopher McQuarrie's best Mission Impossible movie is Fallout. And, I'll give him props for that one. I'll give Tom Cruise props and everyone who's involved in that movie. Dude, that movie had Henry Cavill. I mean, hot damn, I'll give this movie props in a lot of reasons. It made necessary changes to events that happened in the first movie. In the first movie, it seemed like the story was going a certain way, even with that ending and the cliffhanger nature of it all. But then this movie was like, oh no, we're not going that way. We're actually going a different way. It wasn't so much as a way of like subverting expectations or whatnot. It was more or less a thing of, if I had to like take a wild guess, I think it was more of a case of seeing the feedback that that first movie got and saying, okay, now that we have some time before the next movie drops, let's make some adjustments before we start filming and then improve the story that that first movie set up. Gabriel as the villain is way more interesting. Is like he's sort of let loose in this one, where in the first one he was more restrained, and he was this like, you know, the villain of, he was a case of the power I represent is why you should be afraid of me. I am not inherently scary by myself, but the power I represent, that's what makes me scary. You should be afraid of that. But in this one, it was definitely a case of, oh no, 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 no. The power I represent, that's cool and all, but make no mistake, I'm still scary in this motherfucker. I'm the guy you should be afraid of because I'm as powerful as the thing I represent is. I'm still the guy who has to execute its will. I'm the scary dude. I'm, the villain of these last two movies. And he's definitely a better villain than Solomon Lane. Solomon Lane, what thing that bugged me about Fallout was that, you had Henry Cavill as this perfect foil to Ethan Hunt, and he's not the main villain. Solomon Lane is. It's like, heck no. Like, Henry Cavill is working for somebody. He's working for Solomon Lane. It's like, it bugged me that this franchise just like, oh yeah, Solomon Lane is going to be like the Hannibal Lecter type figure. And it's like, man, screw that guy. Get rid of him. It's not that interesting. Having an action hero, a very physical action hero, go up against a cerebral bad guy can be interesting for one movie. You can't do that for like two movies. At some point, the bad guy, if you're gonna have him be a bad guy across multiple films, the hero has to get his hands on him at some point. And having a villain that Ethan Hunt can physically go toe to toe against is way more interesting than having Ethan Hunt jump through hoops to get his hands on a villain that can't properly go up against him. So yeah, Gabriel being the villain of this film was a much better choice as opposed to the last film where he was just working on behalf of the villain of the film, which would have been this AI. Yeah, that was the non-spoiler review of Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. Final grade! Looking back at this movie as the closing chapter in the franchise, I'm going to have to give it a 7.5 out of 10. I know it's the 8th movie, but I'm going to give it a 7.5 because in some areas, as opposed to, rather than be its own movie, it feels more like 1.5, like Mission Impossible 1.5. It feels like, in some ways, the third act of the movie that came before it. And in bits and pieces, it feels like a closing out of the entire Mission Impossible series, but not fully so. It was, if it had been one or the other, it would have got maybe an 8 out of me, but it tried to do both, and it did both good, but had it chosen one and stuck with it, it could have done both really great. I enjoyed it, would recommend it. I don't know if it's got some places rewatch value, but there's a chunk of the movie that's like, okay, that was a great first watch. I don't know how it'll do upon repeat viewing. So yeah, 8 out of 10, would recommend. That was Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. And yeah, that's all I got to say on that one. Hoo boy, let's get into this one, man. Bum, 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 bum. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the spoiler review of Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. If you still want to see the movie for yourself and not have anything spoiled, you were warned, folks. I gave you all my thoughts in that non-spoiler review. Now we're going to dive into the Final Reckoning. Full spoilers ahead. Beep, beep, beep. This message will spoil the movie in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. You were warned. So, man. Now let's dive into that one. All right. It turns out I'm just going to jump right into it. This movie, yeah, it definitely references a lot of movies, and it uses the information gained in those movies to clinch the story in this one. Turns out that the rabbit's foot MacGuffin from not the last movie, Mission Impossible 3, Turns out the rabbit's foot MacGuffin from that movie was not, in fact, some kind of biological weapon, as some would have you believe. And as it was heavily insinuated, it might be based on the little symbol that it had on it. I thought it was some kind of bioweapon, and given the fact that Owen Davian at the time was some kind of terrorist, you figure it would be some sort of bioweapon. Because what would a guy like that want with a device like this for? It must be some kind of bioweapon, or whatever it was. It was the high likelihood that it was some sort of bioweapon, but it turns out that wasn't what it was. In fact, it was the source code for the evil AI that exists now and that Ethan is going up against. And Ethan getting it from the Chinese in exchange for his wife from Owen Davian, and it ending up in the hands of the United States was exactly what allowed the entity to exist as it does in the in the final film here. Now Luther, Mission Impossible cast regular Luther has created a poison pill device that can be used against the entity and take it down. He did this from his hospital bed, and while he was recovering in a hospital, I have no idea what he was recovering from. I don't know. Maybe there was some. I haven't seen the last movie in a while. I don't know what he's recovering from, but he's in hospital, and I guess he's injured, or and maybe he's sick. I'm not sure. The movie doesn't say. But we this moment where they meet him in his hospital bed and he hands him the poison pill leads to a pretty well written scene between the three core characters. Luther, Benji, and Ethan. I mean, Vingrhames would have been a solid Lex Luthor. I'll give him that much. He would have been a solid Lex Luthor. I mean, he got that voice to him, and that gravitas. Like, just imagine Superman going up against a badass Marcellus Wallace. And besides, man, Superman in the animated series was black. Let's be real. Superman animated series Luthor was a black dude. Look at that skin, man. Look at that stance. Like, bruh. I know he voiced by Clancy Brown, but that's a brother right there. Come on. He black. Anyway, moving that to one side. Vingrhames, hey man, if Michael Clark Duncan can be the Kingpin, then Vingrhames can be Lex Luthor. Anyway, moving aside from that. Yeah. This is all before Ethan and Benji head off to go after Gabriel after the events of the last film, and Gabriel's failure to get the key has left him forsaken by the entity. So now he seeks to get the key. So Ethan thinks, oh, you want to get the key to get back in the entity's good graces. And he's like, oh, no. I'm beyond that. I don't want to get back in the entity's good graces. I want to control the entity. Like, I'm going to take this poison pill that you've made, and I'm going to, take this key and open up that place that the machine wants to get into so I can control it and have it execute my will. I'm going to reshape the world in my image, not its own image. Like, that's his plan. That's the great idea that he's got going on. He's like, I'm done, working for the entity. I'm going to make it so that the entity works for me now. And that was a welcome move. I applaud that. Absolutely. Yes. This dude should be the villain. Give me a villain with a face. A faceless AI entity that the hero can't truly go up against is not something that is key to this franchise. Every movie in this franchise that was solid had a villain that we could identify, a villain that we could see, someone we can hate. Ethan Hunt and his team could actively go up against. When he had to go up against that evil IMF, basically, it's an evil version of Ethan's team in Rogue Nation. Oh, you had to go up against Solomon Lane and them. It's like, now you're fighting an organization. It feels more like you're fighting forces as opposed to people. And overall in the series, it does feel like, they are fighting forces, but those forces aren't the main villain. There is, if you go high enough in any organization, there's always one person calling the shots. And that's the person they've always gone up against. So making the person at the top an AI just feels so disconnected from what this series is supposed to be and what it's in its very DNA. So making him the main villain that they have to go up against, while having the entity be a secondary force they go up against, and having the IMF itself be a secondary force that they have to go up against, it just really, and throwing in this movie has a lot of secondary villains. Let me just say that much. It really increases the stakes. Plus, it feels like some progress is being made as we overcome these individual forces in the lead up to the final showdown with the big bad of the film. So yeah, Luther gets set up for death by Gabriel. after he traps him in a room with this huge plutonium bomb. So Luther is this bomb is really such a way that Luther can disarm it, but he can't stop it from going off. He can just turn off the plutonium part of it, but those detonators will still go up with enough explosion. He can turn off the bomb, but he cannot shut off the detonators. The detonators will still go off with enough explosives to level the building that he's in. So no matter what happens, Luther dies. No matter what happens, Ethan loses. So he gets to have they have their final goodbyes before Ethan runs off, just narrowly escaping the explosion as it happens. And it is revealed over the course of the movie that Shea Wiggum. I keep doing this. Even in the Man of the House movie, got his name. So Shea, let's say Wiggum. I'm gonna say Wiggum, okay? Wiggum in the last movie, who was hunting down Ethan, it's revealed in this movie that he's actually the son of Jim Phelps. I heard that name and I was like, Phelps? Isn't he the guy from? And then they show that, yes, it is in fact, Jim Phelps was in fact the dude from Mission Impossible 1. He was John Voight's character. And it's like, oh, damn, that's his kid? I mean, no disrespects to Wiggum, but dude, you look old enough to be his brother. But like a younger brother, no disrespect, like a really younger brother, but still, if you said he was your cousin, I would have been like, okay, yeah, I see that. Or if you said he was his brother, I'll buy that. But like, you're his son? I'm like, hey man, Mission Impossible 1 wasn't that long ago, bro. But hey, it is what it is, And so yeah, the villain played by John Voight in the first movie, and so Ethan thinks this guy's clearly out for revenge. That's why he's chasing me. That's why you've been chasing me down so hard. That's why you want to stop me, even though you know it's in your best interest not to. You want revenge for what I did to your old man. And lets him know, like, nah, that's not it. I'm not here for revenge. I'm not even here to clear my dad's name. I'm just doing my job. Do you know why? Because that name belongs to me now. It's my name now. I don't care about what, you did to my dad. This ain't what it's about. I don't care that his name was associated with treachery for years. That ain't what this is about. I'm going to change that. I am going to do what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to do my job. I'm going to bring you in, and the Phelps name is going to be associated with me, not Jim Phelps, and not you. It's like, huh. It actually makes some valid points of like when he's like, I'm just doing my job by bringing you in. And, he hates the fact that Ethan has continuously gambled the lives of millions of people by disobeying orders time and time again, doing his own thing time and time again, because this was, that could go wrong. If he did this shit, if he gambled the lives of millions and it went in line with what he was ordered to do, the dude was like, I wouldn't be bothered by it. But you be disobeying orders, you be doing your own thing. And that's like, you put the world at risk on a consistent basis, and like, man, we can't stand for that no more. The world can't hinge on whether or not the world is destroyed, can't hinge on a dude who's as reckless as this guy. So yeah, so they arrest Ethan and they bring him into the same briefing room that he gassed in the last movie. And the president's coming to see him, and they're like, Madam President. And I guess in the time between Mission Impossible Fallout and Final Reckoning, Angela Bassett's character must have gotten a promotion, because I don't know what she was doing. I don't know what her title was in the last movie. Oh, no. Yeah. She was the head of the CIA. She was the head of the CIA in Mission Impossible Fallout, and now she's Madam President. So I guess when the time this script was written, they must have still been banking on Kamala Harris winning the election and having America having its first Madam President, its first black female president, like a bunch of other films that were, I'm guessing written around the same time. The election must not have hadn't happened yet by the time the script was written. So having a Madam President in this movie was, at the time the script was written, something that was going to be like, oh, they were going to be ahead of the curve. But, delays because of the writer's strike and delays to retooling of the script meant that, this movie came out way after the election. So it's like, it's kind of like, oh, okay, this thing we were banking on happening didn't happen, but it's not going to affect the movie. So it's like, yeah. And either that or they just wanted an excuse to bring back Angela Bassett and have her be in this movie, even though she's got a totally different role. But hey, who can blame her, man? It's Angela freaking Bassett. She should have won that award she should have won the Oscar for What's Love Got to Do with It. I believe that. And she should have won. She definitely should have won an Oscar for Wakanda Forever. That performance, man, when she hits that line of like, "I am queen of the most powerful nation in the world, and my entire family is gone. Have I not given everything?" Dude, I felt that. No other movie can match that shit. No other movie. I don't know what movie. I don't know what other movie was out that year. I can't think of it right now. That performance was so good. I was like, that line right there. That's that Oscar stuff right there. That's that where you feel what the character's going through. It's like you understand that shit. You have all this power in the world to do whatever you want. And the one thing you can't do is like protect the people who matter most to you. It's like, damn, you feel that pain. Even if you haven't gone through that, you can feel that pain just coming off this. Oh, dude. It's just, oh man, 2020. That woman has been getting robbed at the Oscars, bro. That's all I got to say. That woman has been getting robbed. Damn. But yeah, that's not a here nor there. That's not a here nor there. That's all I got. Moving on, man. Moving on. Shout out to whenever I do the review, there's always like one person in the cast where I'm like, let me give them their props. I mean, Angela Bassett is that person. In Man of the House, it was Shea Wiggum. In this one, it's Angela Bassett. If I'd give anybody props, I'm gonna give her props. She is the only freaking she is the one. It's not the only person in the movie I can give props, but she is like, I gotta shine a light on somebody in this movie, and this is the person I choose to shine a light on because she deserves it, man. I don't even believe in deserve. This woman didn't deserve it. This woman earned that. She earned props from me and everyone else. Every accolade she does get, every accolade she should have gotten was earned. So yeah, let's get into that one, man. Moving away from that. So yeah, Ethan's team, after the president lets him out and, they let him go on his merry way, even though she's convinced everyone that she's had him arrested. So Ethan and his team, goes out to the Arctic, Alaska, actually. They go out to Alaska to see the station chief of that location, of the IMF station that's in that location. And turns out it's William Dunlow from the first Mission Impossible movie. I'm like, where? I remember like the door opening and then out he comes. I'm like, hey, wait a minute, that's William Dunlow. I don't know the name William Dunlow because he's some big freaking deal that was in the movie. I know the name William Dunlow because they say the name William Dunlow so many freaking times in that scene. Like, he says it when he signs in the first time. He types it when he sits at his desk to log in. He says it when he signs out. And like when Ethan goes down to get it on the desk, they type in full letters like William Dunlow. And then, then when he comes back, he stands at the door, William Dunlow, and he goes in. It's like, oh man, like I gotta go to the bathroom, like, cause he got that stomach shit. Then he says again, like William Dunlow, and then he's out the door. So shit, I remember that dude's name, and I remember his face, cause like, well, I've seen Mission Impossible 1 a bunch of times. Also because, dude, you feel sorry for that guy. That guy got shafted because of what Ethan and his friends did, and they broke into a room that he designed and made as impenetrable as possible. You can kind of see why he got the blame for that, because it was his ID that they used to break in, and this was a room that he made and said no one could get in, and then someone got in. So in their eyes, it's a blunder on 2 levels. So like they just like ship him off to Alaska. A throwaway line becomes a plot point in this movie. Seemingly things you've seemingly forgotten throughout the franchise become, what was, they're not loose ends, but things you've probably forgotten about from all these movies are tied back into this one. And it's like, if you catch it, it's like, hey, I know what that is. Or I know what that reference is. It's not, the movie doesn't hinge on member berries. If you don't remember William Download, that's okay. The movie doesn't need you to, but it's cooler if you do. But yeah. Anyway, William Donlow from the first movie was shipped out to Alaska after Ethan and his associates broke into the CIA and took the knock list, and he now lives in that IMF station with his wife. So yeah, well, his new wife. And he seems relatively happy until the agents show up. And it turns out not only has Ethan's team showed up, but the Russians have shown up. And they want what, Ethan Hunt and them are looking for, but William Donlow's got. Anyway, so Ethan Hunt, as he's going out to that station with help from the president on this big ship that he's on. He does from this captain, the ship, the George W. Bush, I think it is. So he goes on this aircraft carrier to that location and is being carried by, I think it's a VTOL. That's what it's called. He's being carried there by a VTOL, and he has to dude does a frogman stunt straight out of Terminator Salvation as he see they're in this area and the Russians are also flying in this area, and they're like, hey, they got these jets flying around, and they're like, you're in international waters, like turn around or you'll be fired upon. And the people that Ethan's riding with is like, yo, we need to get up out of here. We need to get out of here before they open fire on us. They ain't gonna warn us again. We need to leave. We only got like 1 minute. And Ethan Hunt is like, damn, man, we gotta wait. We gotta wait for the sub to surface so I can get on and get out of here. And it's like, what do we do? What do we do? And he's just like, open the back door. Okay. Hey, where you going? And he just dives out of there. Like John Connor at Some of Their Salvation, where he's like, they're radioing the submarine. The submarine's like, oh, we can't service right now. And then he's like, tell them to prepare for lock-in. And he just dives out the freaking water like a fucking badass. And he's like floating in that frigid water. And the sub just comes right up and lifts him out of the ocean. It's like, that's a cool shot. That was cool. It was like that. I love that shit. It shows like how crazy it's like how far a dude is willing to go. He's been risking his own life and safety for years across this movie, but it's like, dude was like, I'm going to jump out the back of this airplane and into freezing temperature waters in the hopes that the submarine gets there in time to save me before I freeze to death. Crazy. Anyway, yeah, the captain there is ready, willing, and able to help him, and he keeps calling Ethan Mr. like the whole movie. And it bugs me like, why you keep calling him Mr.? Why do you keep calling this dude Mr.? What's going on here? His name is, and it hits me, oh, he never said what his name was. He never properly introduced himself. He just like said, like, I'm here on a big mission, it's classified, I need your help. We need to, do this, that, and the third. But he never actually said what his name was. So it makes sense that he keeps calling him Mr. And I think I saw this guy in Top Gun Maverick. He was like the guy with like the cones, like directing the planes and stuff. I think anyway. I think, I'm not sure. So at the house, back at the Donlow house in Alaska, they're being kept hostage by the Russians while Donlow finds what they're looking for. There's this huge scuffle that breaks out, and like Ethan's team and the Russians are fighting it out, and it starts a fire when some of the coals that are in the fireplace, they go onto the ground, and this house goes up in flames so damn fast. You're like, what the hell? The coals hit the ground, and like 3 seconds later, whoosh, the carpet's on fire. The bookcase is on fire. The wall is on fire. It's like 5 seconds have passed. Is this place coated in gasoline or something? Like, is petrol a good insulator or some shit? This place goes up like everything in here is fine. Okay, everything in there is wooden, but still, wood doesn't go up. That doesn't like you drop a lump of coal on the ground and next thing you know, whoosh, you just suddenly turn your house into a freaking inferno out of nowhere. Like, what the heck? Meanwhile, on the sub, Ethan is battling a member of the crew who is apparently working on behalf of the entity, and the film cuts back and forth between the two fights. And these two fights give everyone in them something to do. Everyone has a mission that they have to achieve and something getting in their way. Palm Clementif, who's on their team, she, freaking, not Gamora, Nebula, battles this one soldier who's got a gun. The new guy that they recruited on that team, he has a knife fight with this other soldier. He was Sarah Wiggum's partner, but now he's with them. And he's battling a guy with a knife. And like Benji is, so Palm Clementif is fighting a guy with a rifle. And the new guy is fighting a guy with a knife. And Benji is fighting the captain, the Russian captain. He's played by the cab driver from Mission. He's played by the cab driver from Good Day to Die Hard. I want to wake up in a city that never sleep. It never sleep. Like Frank Sinatra, chairman of the board. That guy. He's in this movie. And yeah, he's a good secondary villain, man. He's a solid character actor. I'll give it that much. I don't know what it is, but personally, I think like those moments where like if that guy talks long enough, I'm like, yo, this guy kind of reminds me of Jet Li. Not in his actions, not in his look or anything like that. I'm just like, if I listen to that voice long enough, I'm like, yo, this dude kind of sounds like Jet Li. And you listen to Jet Li talk long enough, if you listen to a scene where he's just like talking calmly and normally, You're like, hey, man, it's just me. It might just be me, but I'm like, there's kind of some similarities between these two voices here, man. Like Gently and this guy kind of sound the same, minus the accent, of course, but still, still. Anywho, going back at it, back to the story. Yeah, ultimately the fight scenes are shot really well here. There's clear establishment of space and urgency and stakes. Whilst there's a funny moment in like Ethan's fight scene where he's fighting in like the gym of the sub, where he like presses this guy's face against the treadmill as it's running, and like as he's fighting him, he's like as he hits him, he like says something to him. He's like, "You spend too much time on the internet." I don't know where that came from, but it's hilarious anyway. So everyone's done with their fights, and not everybody, but like the Russian captain is like, he's grabs a weapon and he's about to like shoot somebody, but the new guy grabs a weapon himself and he fires at him, and this scene pissed me off. To like close out the fight scenes, this scene pissed me off because I'm like, dude, you had 4 shots, 2 opportunities to make them, and you didn't hit a freaking thing. Man, this guy sucks. He had 2 opportunities. Dude fired he had 2 opportunities, right? And in those 2 opportunities to take out the captain, he fired 2 shots, both times, and didn't hit anything. Normally it's the bad guys that have stormtrooper aim, but bruh, it's like that scene in Mulan where she fires off that firecracker and like, you missed? How did you miss? It was 3 feet in front of you. Like, bruh, I watched the scene, I'm just like, bruh, how did you miss? You had 4 shots. Mulan had 1 shot. You could kind of understand she missed, but this dude had 4 shots and missed. How? He was right in front of you. There was nothing in the way. And it wasn't like he was ducking and dodging. Like, bruh, you stink. Damn, man. Oh. Anyway, away from that foolishness. In this fight scenes, after they get the information they need, and Don Lowe sends it out to the good guys, it kind of seems like he burns to death because the film just cuts to Grace escaping with help from Don Lowe's wife, and there was this like big goodbye he had. Like, oh man, he's giving a final goodbye. He doesn't expect to make it out of here. So it seems like he burns to death because last time we saw him, he was up by the radio sending out the information where it needed to go, and the fire was all around, and then it just like cuts to everyone like, come on, we gotta get out of here. Like, oh shit, did Donald die? Did he just die? They bring this dude back to send one message and then die? Like, damn, man, this team really loves fucking up this dude's life, don't they? Anyway, there's this bit of a funny moment where Donald's wife is on this sleigh and they go out with Grace and they stop in the middle of the snow, and she's like, I can't ride anymore, I need to rest. And she's like teaching her how to lead the sleigh dogs, like so they can keep riding whilst you rest on the sleigh cart. And she then hands her this rifle in case they run into a bear, and makes it show her that in case they run into a bear, she even does like a bear stance because she doesn't speak English, but she knows to be like, ah. It's like, oh, in case we run into a bear. Like, okay. So yeah, that was that. And the movie makes sure to notice, like, oh, by the way, the sleigh they're riding has a mobile decompression chamber. So yeah, they make sure to highlight that. Like, she pulls off a tarp and she shows, like, see, mobile decompression chamber. But anyway, moving on from that. So Ethan gets, after getting that fight, Ethan gets some diving equipment and he goes from the submarine all the way onto the Sevastopol, the frozen submarine where the entity was, first came out onto the world. And he goes there to retrieve the original source code for the entity. And while he's on board this sub, that sub starts like, his presence must have upset it somehow or shifted the weight because it starts to roll. And like it's rolling down this like, reef, and it's just rolling and rolling. And he has to frantically, after he gets what he came for, he has to get out of there while the sub is spinning around and the geography is changing and stuff's falling in front of him. So I couldn't tell if it was the film score that created like this foreboding sense of danger with the brass music, or if that was just like the hull of the ship creaking and getting louder and louder. It could have been both, frankly, but either way, it was a solid addition to the scene. So, you know, as the sub is rolling and rolling and stuff's falling in, eventually his path out gets blocked, and he comes up with a plan straight out of Iron Man and Tomorrow Never Dies, as he puts himself in the torpedo bay of the sub, and he has a plan to like shoot his way out using the air in his suit, kind of like a jetpack. But in order to do so, he cuts up the suit so that he can squeeze into the torpedo hole. And once out of there, he tries to swim to the surface in that frigid temperatures. Now, I don't know a lot about deep sea diving. I don't know a lot. I'll admit that. But I'm pretty sure at that point, in that location, if the decompression doesn't kill you, then the freezing temperatures will. If the freezing temperatures don't kill you, the bends will when you like surface too fast. Or like, I don't know, man. There is this thing of like, hey, if you surface too quickly, or if you hold your breath while you're in the water, it could cause like your lungs to burst or something like that. But I don't know, man. It is what it is. So it's like, yeah, I'm thinking like there are so many things in this scene that should have killed him. Especially since he had to cut up his own suit. So he's got no protection from anything. Like, bro, there's so many things out of all the things this guy survived. This is the one thing where I'm like, man, you should be dead. You're dead. Not you could have died. You're dead. Like, you can't fake this. You can't jury rig this. Bro, you're dead. But for the purpose of the movie to continue, he survives. But like, all that to one side, there is this amazing shot in the movie. I give props to the cinematography and the framing and everything. As he desperately tries to swim up, his body just gives out, and he's like, he's floating to the surface, and the camera tilts. So like, there's just this sheet of ice above him. It looks that way. There's like a sheet of ice above him. Like, even if he made it that far, he'd have to like bust out. But the way like he floats up to the water and the camera tilts upside down, it looks almost like he's sinking. Like, damn, he's failed. It's like, he might have actually just like KO'd here. We know he's not going to because it's still a bunch of time, but still, it does look like, damn, he couldn't make it. There's just some things you just can't overcome, like your own physiology and frigid temperatures and stuff like that, decompression sickness and whatnot. But he makes it and he wakes up to Grace, and, she saved him with the mobile decompression chamber that they had, and it's great. All's good. So him and because the callback to a funny scene in the movie where he sees seemingly what's likely to happen, and he sees like flashes of what could happen, and he tells Grace like, "Don't go on the ice." It's like, what? What does that mean? What does that? She asks him like, "What does that mean?" He's like, "Doesn't matter. Whatever happens, just don't go on the ice, okay?" It's like, oh, okay, like weird. And ultimately, it's her going on the ice that ends up saving him, which even though it was something he told her not to do, but still. So we see that Donlo survived, actually, and he's helping Ethan's team, and Ethan, get to where they need to be to just like shut down the entity now that they know what they need to know. And Ethan's got the original source code of the entity that from that sub. So, and he's able to have a heart-to-heart with Ethan about how his getting transferred to Alaska because of what Ethan did. As sorry as Ethan is, his getting transferred to Alaska was actually one of the best things that ever happened to him. Because, when he was working in the CIA, he was lonely, but like he thought he was happy. And if Ethan hadn't done that, he would still be thinking he was happy there. He would still be thinking like he had a life there that was worth living. But nah, he was alone. But it wasn't until he got shipped to Alaska that, that became the best thing that happened to him, because it allowed him to meet his wife and discover what true happiness is. And not only that, but he kept the knife. He kept the knife that Jean Reno dropped into the room back in the first Mission Impossible. So that was a lovely moment, That was a nice scene. I love that moment. It was so well written. The music was great, and it's well lit too. It had like this warm feeling to it. A moment of like, hey, we just had a crazy set piece. Let's calm it way down and just have these two characters talk to each other and like patch things up, So Ethan and his team go to this mine, and they run into Gabriel's men. They make a deal of, okay, we're going to give you the poison pill. We're going to give you the original code for the thing. You're going to, use it on the entity. And it's like, the only way we can win is if we give this to Gabriel and we have him like shut it down. He thinks he's going to shut it. He's going to have control the poison pill and like shut down the entity in that way, and then use what's in the vault that they're going to get control of the entity, but we need him to shut it down first because he has the poison pill key, but we have the original code. We need both of these things. In order to get that key, the only way we'll get to use that key is if we get him to use it. So we need to give him this original source code. And everything seems like it's going according to plan until freaking Kittredge and IMF guy Wiggum, they show up and they foil the plan. But then, Gabriel hits the Uno reverse, where his dudes show up again, take out their guys, and they ruin their plan, and he runs off. Which leads to this made me laugh when I saw this straight up Snoopy versus Red Baron dogfight. Like, yes, because this is what the franchise needed right here. A Snoopy versus Red Baron dogfight in the sky. These two planes, these two like crop dusters going at it in the air. Ethan in one plane, Gabriel in the other. With Gabriel saying, I told you, wherever I go, that the potco will follow. Yeah. Meanwhile, back in like the bunker that the president and all the chief of staff are hiding in, one of the guy played by not Nick Frost, not Nick Frost. He was in Parks and Rec. I think was it Parks and Rec or Community? I always get those confused. Damn, I don't know if it was Parks and Rec, but Nick Offerman, yeah, Nick Offerman is in this movie as this general, and in the war room that they're in, it's one of those bunkers, miles underground, safe from radiation blast and all that. He asked one of his like soldiers, like, give me your gun, soldier. Like, sir, like, give me your gun. I stutter, give me your gun. And he takes that gun and he just hangs onto it and he like goes back in the room. And I'm thinking, oh, he must be working with the entity, or at least he must agree with what the entity is planning to do, and he's gonna somehow reveal himself and foil whatever Madam President wants to do, because the things she's got going on must be clashing with what he wants to happen. But like, damn, okay, I see where this is going. This is what's gonna happen. So he thinks the best plan is to launch a nuclear assault on the countries that the entity has taken over, because the entity in this plan is taking over all the nuclear arsenal of all the countries of the world, except for a few countries that are the holdouts. Not the holdouts, but like that are resisting. So the plan they pitch is a preemptive strike on all these freaking countries. That way, it gives those it stops those countries from being able to launch nukes against them once they get corrupted by the entity. Or it stops the entity from being able to launch against the US. But like, it's like, damn, you're talking about sacrificing billions of people. It's like, and blowing up a US city while you're at it so that it doesn't look like we did this. It looks like the entity did this. I'm just like, and like we've listed some cities that, we could, cities that we could sacrifice. And Madam President ain't going for that. She decides not to launch the US nukes. Instead, she decides to do what they should have done from the beginning and shut them down entirely. But okay, so you think surely this is it. This is the point where General pulls out a weapon and he opens fire and he's like, I can't let you do that. Like either he's working with the entity or he agrees that, the nuclear option is the right option and shutting down leaves them vulnerable. But like, I'm thinking this is it. But actually, it's one of the Secret Service who pulls a weapon, and the general is the guy who saves the day with the gun that he took off. And it's like, oh, that was nice, man. Way to go, Nick Offerman. Oh no. And it's a surprising turn of events. He gets hit while saving the day. And I'm like, I remember seeing this thinking, oh, they got him right in the medals. Oh, shit. But, there's this shot during the dogfight. As we cut back to the dogfight, there's a shot in there that reminded me of Mission Impossible 1 where Ethan is holding on to Gabriel's plane and the air is like blowing his hair like a mop into like this weird mop shape. Like, it's kind of similar to like this one scene in Mission Impossible 1 where he was on the bullet train and the wind was like blowing down on him there. So, they fight. It's itchy and scratchy in midair. So, Ethan breaks Gabriel's arm straight up James Bond, No Time to Die's him, and throws him off his plane, but he's like hanging on with the arm he has left. And Gabriel shoots him a look, and he smiles and goes, Only one of us has a parachute. Good luck. Before he lets go, and he hits the plane. Like the moment he lets go, he hits that plane rudder balls first, and like the wind folds him instantly. Like the way he lands like straight up vertical, and he lets go, legs spread, and his he hits that plane rudder balls first, and that wind resistant folds him. It folds his body so hard that his head hits the freaking rudder, and it is like, ugh. That's why I was like, oh, and then it folded him in. It was like, oh shit, damn, and it did the air just pushes him right off, and this kind of messed up, but it is screwed up. It is a screwed up, if not comical death, man. Like, wow, dude, just damn, they did him like that, huh? So the plane's failing, and Ethan grabs a backup parachute and he jumps off. He's got the source in one hand, he's got the poison pill in the other, and all he has to do is connect the two, and that'll be enough to like get the team on the ground to do what they need to do to shut down the entity. But like as he's trying to connect the two, the parachute he's on catches fire, and he has to like put that on hold. And they're like, "Come on, man, it's getting down to the wire here." And you could feel like the tension building and building. So he cuts that parachute, deploys a backup, and then connects the entity. The lights come on, and Grace like is able to shut it off like in one of those like blink of an eye moments. Because early in the movie they set up like, hey, what makes a good pickpocket? Timing, and that she can seemingly steal from people or take something off you like in the blink of an eye before you even realize what's happened. She's already done it. She's fast hands and she's quick witted, and she's got a good eye and all that. The movie, whereas in the last movie, there was some feelings of like, wait, why are you here? Like, why are you here? Why is there a pickpocket? It felt like the movie was trying to shoehorn this woman into the story. But in this movie, she becomes an important part of the story. She is the one who saves the day, ultimately. She's the one who makes the final move that, takes out the entity. And it's good that they beefed up a character this way. They beefed up a lot of characters. Everybody gets their moment to shine, and it does. No one feels shortchanged. Everyone is important. That's what I said earlier. Like, there's no one in here that feels like, oh man, oh, this is gratuitous, or there's no scene that feels like it could be cut out for time. Everything works here. Everything has a setup and payoff to it. It's really well done. So they manages to defeat the entity, and after they do that, it turns out the poison pill had a message that was set to play after it was uploaded. And in this message, that's where we get Luther's final goodbye. He promises that he'll see Ethan again, and he lets him know how he feels about him and everything they've gone through. And Luther's message ends with him telling this message will self-destruct in 5 seconds. And it thus destroys the Podco, it destroys the poison pill, and thus any hope of controlling the entity. Meanwhile, Don Lowe and New Guy and Grace have all, manages to take what remains of the entity, and they give it to Ethan at the close of the film, where he shakes hand. They all go to meet in a public square, right? The same public square from Ghost Protocol, and he shakes hands with all of them. They're all well and everything's cool. They hand over what remains of the entity to Ethan, and they trust him to do the right thing with it, because there were moments early in the story where they're like, hey, what if we could like properly control the entity? Like, what if instead of destroying it, we took control of it? And Ethan was like, this power is so great that no one nation should have any control of this. No one person should even have control of this. Nobody should be calling the shots on this thing. This thing can't be trusted to call the shots on itself. So it's like, it needs to be gone. So yeah, they shake hands, and they all give each other that knowing look, and they go their separate ways as a rendition of the Mission Impossible theme starts to play as Ethan walks off and the smoke starts to fill the area and he disappears into the black. Woo, baby. Man, a 7.5 out of 10, baby. A 7.5 out of 10, I'll give it. Man, this movie has a lot going for it. I'll give you that. I'll tell you, this movie's got a lot going for it. Mission Impossible Final Reckoning definitely works as its own standalone. It's not a standalone movie, it's a sequel to that part one. It works as a sequel to that part one because whilst the story isn't bigger, it is better. It does make more of a focus on characters, and you do care whether these characters live or die. There is a possibility, once Luther goes, it's like, man, there's a possibility that any of them could go. There's serious stakes. There's the goals are easy to understand. The urgency is like you can feel that coming off these characters. The villain is played wonderfully. Um, Tom Cruise is doing his thing and he's still doing it as good as he can. Benji as Benji does bring the humor in some scenes. William Downlow is a welcome addition to the team. He's not just a cameo. I mean, his performance could be described as a cameo given how long he's in the movie, but like he isn't just there to be a reference. He actually has a contribution to the story. It definitely, this film was definitely a good way to, it's a good two-parter. It's a good part two in the Reckoning, duology in this series. As a culmination of the entire series, you know, it works. It doesn't work as great as it could have, but it does work. I'll give it props, man. Gotta give it them props. So yeah, that was Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. I liked the action. I liked the acting. I liked the way the cast members played off each other. The way the hero and the villain were so diametrically opposed, and the lengths they were both. It showed how like the lengths Ethan was willing to go to save the day, and the lengths that the villain was willing to go to gain control of the entity and do and enact his plan. It was a good step up as the villain went from I'm serving the entity to no, I want to rule the entity. I want to be the one calling the shots instead of having the shots called for me. So yeah, and everybody stepped up their game. Even people who weren't in the last movie stepped up their game in terms of what they did. The actor who played Kittredge was dialed back in terms of like the stuff he did and his level of involvement, because I guess the last movie was, like he was the secondary antagonist of sorts in that movie. So having him as much as he can in that movie made sense. So we already had him a bunch in part one, so it makes sense to kind of dial back his involvement. But yeah, so the reveal of Wiggum's, parentage, it was a surprise in the sense when it happened, but then after it happens, it's like it's not even a thing. So it's like, oh man, you're that guy's son. Well, okay, that's cool. That kind of explains why you're hounding him so bad and you want to like catch him so much. And then it's like they never go back to it. I mean, they meet at the end of the movie and they shake hands, but like that's after the world is saved and there's no risk anymore. It's just like, all right, it is what it is. But that's that. They could have done more with that. It's just like, yeah, that's all I got to say on that character. Palm Clementive's face turn and her siding with Ethan and his team was, it was foreshadowed in the last movie. They were like, yeah, you're going to betray us because he saved your life. And it pays off in this one because she does turn on the entity and she helps them a great deal, even though like she's down to just flatline someone right off the bat. And they're like, hey, no killing. That's not necessary. But, once they're faced down by these goons, it's like, okay, you can take them out, no problem. Yeah. There was a funny moment she had in the movie when they're chasing down Gabriel in this tunnel, and the new guy's like freeze, and he stops, and the new guy's like I got him, but then Bob Clementi's character comes down the corner and she immediately opens fire on him, and new guy's like, hey, we want him alive, and she just responds, well, I want him dead. That was nice. That was cool. I give that props for that one. So many things to give props in this movie. So many things that's like, it stops from being. It's a 7.5. There's so many things that stop it from being an 8, but it is a solid 7.5. Yeah. The Luther farewell was pretty sad. His final narration over the movie it's a pretty good way to close out the film, because he's been there. He's one of the characters of this franchise that have been there since the first one. Benny's great, but he only joined in the third movie. because Luthor is that one character throughout the entire series. He's been there since the first movie, and he's made appearances throughout. And if there was ever like a beating, well, if like Ethan Hunt is the beating heart of the franchise, like Luthor would have to be like the soul, because he's been there with him since the jump. And to see him go out like that, go out doing what he does best, when he hacked that bomb and he went out saving the city, but at the cost of his own life, it's a good way to write out that character in an emotional manner. And you see Ethan like reckoning with that, like he lost a friend. Like he's lost friends before, like in the last movie when Ilsa got killed, but it's just like, this one really hit hard because he's known Luthor longer than anyone on his team. And to lose him like that, really took a toll on Ethan. And he had more of the reason to get revenge on Gabriel. So when he was like telling his team, like, no, we need to give the pod code to Gabriel so that the plan will work, you could see he was initially resistant to that, but he knew like this is what we have to do. But yeah, it's definitely, this movie is a 7.5 out of 10. Would recommend. I don't know about the rewatchability, but it is pretty good. I'll watch it if it presents itself. Like if it's on TV or if like someone's got it on DVD or something, I'll watch it if it presents itself. I'm not going to seek it out, but yeah, 7.5 out of 10. Would recommend. Did enjoy. And that was Moonlight Kingdom's review of Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all them nice things, folks. I've been your host, Man on the Moon, the Moonlight King, and I'm out of here.